Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing. In a world where everyone is rushing to be heard, to give an opinion, to speak before thinking, there is a rare and divine wisdom in the one who knows when to hold their peace. Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of restraint. It is the posture of maturity. It is a sacred act of self-government. There are times when your silence will carry more weight than your words. There are situations where your ability to stay quiet can protect your future, guard your relationships, and preserve your assignment. You must understand you are not designed to speak in every room, reply to every insult, or answer every accusation. The first moment where silence becomes a weapon of wisdom is when you are angry. Anger has a language and it is destructive. If you speak from a place of rage, your words can become weapons that wound the people you love. Anger is a momentary madness. If you don't control it, it will control you. When you are angry, pause. Hold your tongue until your spirit has caught up with your emotions. Many destinies have been delayed by words spoken in a moment of fury. A calm heart can steer a stormy conversation. Don't let temporary emotion create permanent damage. You must also learn to be silent when you do not know the whole story. We live in a reactionary culture where people form conclusions with limited information. But you must not allow the spirit of assumption to rule your tongue. Speaking prematurely is like building a house on a cracked foundation. It will collapse. Wisdom waits. Wisdom investigates. Wisdom listens before it speaks. The more you understand, the less you have to say. Let your silence be a sign that you are still learning, still discerning, still processing. Don't judge the seed until you've seen the fruit. Then there are moments when your words will do more harm than healing. You may be right, but being right does not always give you the right to speak. Some truths are best delivered in the wrapping of grace and timing. A harsh word can kill a tender heart. Some people don't need your correction. They need your compassion. Silence can be the bridge that love walks across. It gives you the time to pray, to assess, and to decide whether your words will build or break. If it won't edify, it's not worth saying. And when you're being provoked, tempted, pressured to respond, be silent. Not because you are defeated, but because you are disciplined. Not every voice deserves an answer. Not every accusation requires a response. Some people come into your life just to get a reaction, to pull you out of character and drag you into their chaos. But your peace is your power. When Jesus stood before his accusers, he said nothing. Because sometimes silence is not cowardice, it is confidence. Let your consistency speak for you. Let your results answer your critics. Another vital time to embrace silence is when you are still processing. You cannot speak with wisdom when your mind is clouded, your emotions are raw, and your spirit is unsettled. Give yourself permission to think, to reflect, to pray. Don't rush to speak just to fill the silence. Sometimes the wisest thing to say is, I don't know yet. When you speak prematurely, you often misrepresent your heart and misdirect your audience. But when you wait, when you ponder, when you ask God for clarity, your words can become vessels of revelation. And then there are seasons when God is working behind the scenes, and you must learn to be still. When you're misunderstood, misrepresented, or mistreated, everything in you may want to explain, defend, or retaliate. But sometimes the greatest act of faith is to remain silent and let God work. He doesn't need your voice to fight battles he already plans to win. Your silence can be a declaration of trust. Let your quietness be your confidence. Let your stillness be your strategy. God does more in your silence than you can in your shouting. Lastly, be silent when it's time to listen. The art of listening is almost lost in this generation. Everyone wants to be heard, but few want to hear. But healing happens in the presence of a listener. Influence begins with empathy. Sometimes the wisest person in the room is not the one who knows the most, but the one who listens the most. When you listen, you gain insight. When you listen, you build trust. You earn the right to speak by proving you're willing to hear. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom under pressure. There are moments in life when your silence speaks louder than your opinion. In a world driven by noise, opinion, and constant commentary, there are times when saying nothing at all can be more powerful than the most well-crafted argument. People are constantly looking for validation, seeking approval, craving attention. They are watching for your reaction. And in those moments, the strength of your silence can be the loudest message you send. When you're in a difficult situation, when you face accusations, or when you're confronted with negativity, you may feel the urge to respond, to defend yourself, to clarify your position, or to assert your truth. But let me remind you that sometimes your silence, when you choose not to engage in the drama or enter the battle of words, is a declaration of your confidence and your maturity. Your silence doesn't mean you're defeated. It means you're secure in who you are and in what you know. When people criticize you, when they misunderstand you, when they question your character, your silence speaks volumes about your integrity. It says, I don't need to fight back to prove my worth. My actions will speak for me. There are situations in life where your words can escalate conflict, but your silence can de-escalate the tension and protect your peace. You don't always need to give an explanation. Sometimes your behavior, your dignity, and your refusal to engage in negativity will leave a far greater impression. In the same way, in relationships, whether personal or professional, there are times when your silence is a sign of respect and wisdom. When you remain silent, not because you are passive, but because you are allowing the other person the space to speak, you communicate an understanding that their voice matters. Silence can give room for others to process, to think, and to express their thoughts, while also creating an environment where their words are heard with the value they deserve. What you choose not to say can be just as significant as what you do say. Sometimes your refusal to speak in a volatile situation protects both you and the other person from harm. The most mature people know when to hold their tongues. And in those moments, your silence becomes a shield, guarding your heart, your relationships, and your destiny. In a world that often rewards the loudest voice and the quickest response, there is something remarkable about those who understand the value of quiet strength. They understand that words have weight, and they choose to use them sparingly with purpose. The power of silence is not in its absence, but in its ability to speak volumes without uttering a single word. Your silence becomes a voice that demands attention without ever raising its volume. So, I urge you today, be aware of the moments when your silence speaks louder than any opinion you could ever express. Recognize the power in withholding your words and embracing the strength that comes from holding your peace. Because in those moments, your silence isn't passive, it's active. It's a message that communicates wisdom, self-control, and a deep understanding of the seasons of life you're walking through. Maturity is measured by how you control your tongue, not how much you speak. In this world, we tend to equate maturity with age, experience, or accomplishments. But true maturity is not simply about how long you've lived or how much you've achieved. It's about how well you manage yourself in the face of challenges. And one of the clearest indicators of maturity is the ability to control your tongue. Your tongue is a small part of your body, but it has enormous power. The Bible compares the tongue to the rudder of a ship, a small instrument that controls the direction of a massive vessel. In the same way, the words you speak can steer the course of your life and influence those around you. The immature person is quick to speak, quick to react, and often speaks without thinking. But the mature person knows that silence is sometimes the wisest response, and they recognize that words spoken in haste can create more problems than solutions. The ability to control your tongue is a sign of spiritual maturity and emotional intelligence. It's the mark of someone who has learned to pause before they speak, to assess the situation, and to weigh their words carefully. The wise person knows that not every thought needs to be expressed, and not every opinion needs to be shared. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean you need to give it a voice. Sometimes silence is the highest form of self-control. Your tongue can either build or destroy. It can tear down relationships or build them up. It can create peace or provoke conflict. The mature person understands the weight of their words and uses them sparingly. They realize that it's not about how often they speak, but the quality and purpose behind what they say. The Bible reminds us that the tongue has the power of life and death, and we must be careful how we use it. Maturity also means knowing when to remain silent even when you have the right to speak. In some situations, the mature response is to listen rather than to argue. It is better to be silent and learn than to speak prematurely and miss the opportunity to grow. In relationships, the mature person listens first, understands the situation, and then responds with wisdom and grace. They know that silence in these moments is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of emotional strength. Moreover, Maturity is not only about controlling the tongue in moments of conflict, but also in moments of success. There is a temptation to boast, to brag, or to seek validation when things are going well. But the truly mature person knows that true greatness is not displayed in the number of words you speak about yourself, but in the humility with which you carry your success. They know that their actions will speak louder than any praise they could give themselves. In every moment, we are called to use our words wisely. A mature person is selective about the moments when they speak and the moments when they remain silent. They recognize that their words can carry weight, and they don't waste them on trivial matters. Their silence is not an absence of expression, but an expression of wisdom. Their words are measured, intentional, and aligned with their purpose. And in a world that is filled with noise and chaos, this ability to control the tongue and speak only when necessary is a mark of true maturity. True strength lies not in the volume of your voice, but in the discipline of your silence. When you can control what you say, you show that you have mastered yourself. You have understood that the power to change lives, influence others, and shape your destiny is often found in the words you do not speak. As you grow in wisdom, you will learn that maturity is not about how much you speak, but how much you choose to remain silent. Your destiny is often protected by what you refuse to say. It is easy to speak out of impulse, to respond to every criticism, to defend yourself when you feel attacked, or to share your deepest thoughts with the wrong people. But what many fail to realize is that sometimes the greatest protection of your future lies not in the words you speak, but in the words you choose to withhold. In life, there will be moments when you are tempted to share things that are personal, precious, or even painful. There will be moments when your ego tells you that you need to respond, to clarify, to give your side of the story, or to make your feelings known. But what you don't say often guards your future. When you choose to remain silent in certain situations, you are guarding the integrity of your destiny. You are preventing the enemy from having access to your plans, your purpose, and your progress. Think about it. Every word you speak has the potential to create or destroy. And once a word is spoken, it cannot be taken back. It can be twisted, misinterpreted, or used against you. This is why silence becomes a shield, protecting you from unnecessary battles, false accusations, and even from opening the doors to the wrong relationships or opportunities. Sometimes, speaking too soon or too much can derail the plans that God has for you. The Bible teaches us that there is a time to speak and a time to remain silent. The wise person knows that they don't need to share every thought or explain every situation. Their silence is a defense against the enemy's attempts to disrupt their peace, their relationships, or their future. Let's think about the story of Joseph for a moment. Joseph had dreams that revealed his destiny, his future greatness. But when his brother sold him into slavery, he kept quiet. When he was falsely accused and thrown into prison, he held his tongue. In the process, he protected his destiny from the enemies that wanted to derail it. Had Joseph spoken out of anger, vengeance, or frustration, he could have lost his divine opportunity. But his ability to remain silent at the right times allowed him to walk in the fullness of what God had for him. His silence became his protection. Your destiny is often under attack, not from external forces, but from the internal impulses that urge you to speak when you should remain silent. The wrong words spoken in the wrong season can block the path to your purpose. Speaking out of turn can give your enemies ammunition, while silence leaves them with nothing to use against you. When you refuse to speak at certain times, you are protecting your reputation, your relationships, and your future. Furthermore, there are moments when God is working behind the scenes on your behalf. In these seasons, He doesn't need your help to explain things to people or defend your position. Often, God allows things to unfold in ways we don't understand, but He's doing it in silence without our interference. Our words can sometimes get in the way of His plan. When we speak out of turn, we can disrupt the divine timing and the process He's setting in motion. So, in those moments, silence is an act of faith. It is trusting that God will handle the situation in His time and in His way. When you refuse to speak in moments where your words could harm you, you allow God to protect and preserve your future. There is power in knowing when to stay quiet. Sometimes saying nothing is the wisest decision because it keeps the enemy at bay. It allows God to operate freely in your life, making sure that your destiny is protected from the snares of the enemy and the confusion of your own human impulses. Your destiny is precious, and not every part of it should be exposed to the world. Not every thought you have should be spoken aloud. Protect your future by guarding your words. Speak with purpose, and know that sometimes silence is the greatest form of protection you can offer to the divine plan unfolding in your life. Your silence shields you, covering you from unnecessary harm, and preserves the integrity of the great things God has in store for you. God often does His greatest work in your life while you're quiet. In a world filled with noise, activity, and constant striving, it's easy to forget that some of God's most powerful movements in our lives occur in the stillness. The misconception is that when we are silent, we are inactive or that nothing is happening. But in the spiritual realm, quietness is where transformation takes place. It is in the moments of silence that God works deep within us, aligning our hearts, minds, and spirits with His divine purpose. You see, silence creates space for God to speak. When we're constantly talking, always on the go, or consumed with our own thoughts, we often miss the whisper of the divine. It is when we step back and allow ourselves to be still that we open the door for God's voice to be heard clearly. Psalm 40:16-10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." There is a knowing, a deep revelation that only comes in the stillness. While we are busy with our own plans, our own worries, and our own words, God is quietly working in the background, shaping us, molding us, and preparing us for what's ahead. The truth is, God does not need our constant activity to accomplish His will. He is not limited by our business. While we may be restless, He is sovereign and in full control. When we are quiet, we allow God to orchestrate events, open doors, and move mountains without interference. Sometimes we are so busy trying to make things happen that we forget that God is already at work. It is in our silence that He can complete the work He has begun in us, without our own anxious efforts getting in the way. Think about the process of a seed growing. For a seed to grow into a mighty tree, it must first be buried in the ground, hidden from view, silent and still. During this time, the seed is undergoing transformation, deep beneath the surface, in a place that is unseen. The growth and development that occur in this time of silence are critical to the final fruit it will produce. If the seed were to break free too soon, it would never reach its full potential. Similarly, there are times in our lives when God is doing His greatest work in us while we are in a period of silence and waiting. It's a season where our growth is happening beneath the surface, and if we try to rush it, we may disrupt the process. Look at the life of Jesus. His ministry was marked by moments of withdrawal, times when He went alone to pray, to seek the Father, to listen. In those quiet moments, God revealed divine strategies, provided clarity, and strengthened Him for the work ahead. Jesus did not rush. He knew that His purpose required alignment with God's will, and that alignment could only come when He was quiet enough to listen. Many of us are so eager to act, to speak, to make things happen, but it's in the quiet moments that God often gives us the direction, insight, and understanding that will lead to our breakthrough. We may feel like nothing is happening, but rest assured, God is working in ways that are beyond our immediate comprehension. When we step into silence, we make room for Him to move in the hidden, unseen places of our hearts and lives. There are times when God needs to work on our character, to refine us, to remove distractions, or to prepare us for something greater. And these moments of silence, when we are not speaking or striving, are some of the most productive seasons in our spiritual lives. They are the incubators for our purpose, where God is shaping us into the people we need to be in order to walk into the destiny He has prepared for us. Remember that God is not constrained by time. While we might be impatient or frustrated in our waiting, God is preparing us for what's ahead. When we embrace the quiet, we embrace the work He is doing within us. It's not a time to worry or fear that we are being overlooked, but a time to trust that God is working in ways we cannot yet see. The greatest works of God in your life are often unfolding in the silence, and when the time is right, you will see the fruit of what He has been doing behind the scenes. So, trust in the quiet moments. Trust in the silence. It is not a sign that God is absent. It is a sign that He is working. And when you emerge from the stillness, you will see that His greatest work has been accomplished in you, even while you were quietly waiting on Him. Silence in the wrong moment can be deadly, but silence in the right moment can be divine. The power of silence is not only in the moments when we choose to remain quiet, but in knowing when to speak and when to be still. Timing is everything. There are moments when your silence can save you from destruction, but there are also times when your silence, if misused, can lead to devastating consequences. Consider for a moment a situation where silence is the wrong response. When you are witnessing injustice, abuse, or a harmful situation unfolding before your eyes. To remain silent in such moments is not wisdom, it is complicity. There are times when speaking out is the only right thing to do. When silence is chosen out of fear, indifference, or a desire to avoid confrontation, it can allow evil to persist and injustice to go unchecked. In these moments, silence becomes dangerous because it allows harm to continue. Silence, when you have the power to speak up for what is right, can contribute to the suffering of others and rob you of your moral responsibility. The Bible warns us that if we see something wrong and fail to act, we are, in a sense, guilty of allowing it to continue. Proverbs 31:8-9 calls us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. There are times when silence is not the answer. It is your voice that is needed to bring about change, to challenge wrong, and to uphold truth. The wrong kind of silence in these moments can be deadly because it lets evil have its way unchecked. On the other hand, silence in the right moment can be divine. In moments of conflict, trial, or difficulty, there are times when holding your peace is an act of obedience and trust in God. There are moments when God calls us to remain silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. It's in those moments that He can work on our behalf, providing us with divine strategy, peace, and direction. Jesus is the ultimate example of this kind of divine silence. When He stood before His accusers, He was silent before them, trusting in God's plan for His life. He didn't defend Himself. He didn't feel the need to explain or justify His actions. He knew that God's purpose for Him would not be thwarted by the accusations or misunderstandings of men. His silence in the face of criticism was not a sign of defeat, but a powerful statement of trust in God's sovereignty. In our own lives, there are times when silence becomes our spiritual weapon. When we're faced with injustice, misunderstanding, or conflict, God may call us to remain silent so He can fight for us. Silence can be a form of surrender, surrendering the battle to God, knowing that He is the one who will bring justice, healing, and restoration. When we choose silence in the right moment, we make room for God to step in and do what only He can do. We allow Him to fight battles we could never win with our own words or efforts. Consider a situation where you've been wronged or falsely accused. In that moment, the temptation to defend yourself can be overwhelming. But if you choose to remain silent, trusting that God sees the truth and will vindicate you in His time, you are exercising faith. You are allowing Him to do what you cannot do in your own strength. In those moments, your silence is not weakness. It is a declaration of confidence in God's justice and timing. Similarly, in times of personal struggle, when emotions run high and confusion sets in, silence can provide the space for God to speak to you clearly. Instead of trying to fix the problem with your own words, you step back and let God work on your behalf. His timing is perfect, and in the silence He can reveal His plans, give you the wisdom to navigate the situation, and bring peace to your heart. The key is knowing the difference. Silence in the wrong moment can allow the enemy to have his way, but silence in the right moment is where God's hand is at work. It's in those quiet moments of trust, obedience, and waiting that we find divine intervention. Silence becomes a conduit for God's power, a space where miracles are birthed and breakthroughs are realized. So, my friends, let us be discerning. Let us learn the difference between silence that protects us and silence that harms us. May we have the wisdom to speak when necessary and the courage to remain silent when required. For in the silence of the right moment, God's voice is often louder than any words we could ever speak. And in that silence, His divine purpose unfolds in ways that we could never imagine. As we conclude this journey through the power of silence, let me leave you with this truth: silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of wisdom. It is the mastery of the moment, the discipline of the soul, and the strength of the spirit. In a world that thrives on noise, opinions, and endless chatter, it takes true courage to know when to speak and when to remain silent. Remember, your silence is not an act of passivity, but a powerful expression of self-control and divine timing. It is in silence that God often works His greatest miracles, preparing you for the future He has ordained. Your silence can protect your destiny, guard your heart, and position you for success in ways words cannot. When you master the art of silence, you are not simply holding your tongue. You are holding your peace, aligning yourself with the wisdom of the Creator. But never forget this: silence in the wrong moment can lead to destruction. But silence in the right moment can usher in divine intervention. Knowing when to speak and when to be still is the key to living a life of purpose, a life that reflects wisdom, maturity in the heart of God. I encourage you today, choose your words carefully and choose your silence wisely. In moments of frustration, silence may be your greatest strength. In moments of injustice, silence may be your greatest protection. And in moments of waiting, silence may be the space where God reveals His most profound plans for you. The power of silence is not in what it lacks, but in what it holds. When you understand this, you will walk in the fullness of your purpose under the divine hand of God, and you will experience the peace that passes all understanding. Because silence is not weakness, it is wisdom under pressure. And it is through this wisdom that we are shaped into the people God has called us to be, equipped to fulfill the destiny He has prepared for us. Let us walk in silence when we need to, speak with power when called upon, and trust that God is at work in both our words and our quiet. Silence, my friends, is not just an absence of sound. It is the presence of divine purpose.